All right, guys, we're back together for a Spoon Editor podcast. We're all back. We're all back from Japan. We were back last week, but I felt like I still had jet lag. Jen Marston, you were writing for us like crazy while we were out in Japan. Thank you for doing all that hard work.
Yay, Jen.
Thanks, guys.
You are an amazingly fast worker, and we appreciate it. We are going to talk about some of the stories that you've written, Chris, written over the past week or so. Chris, I wanted to start with you and ask you about the news this morning. You wrote an article about Starship getting yet another funding round. Like, they just keep raising money.
Yeah, well, it was funny. I spoke with Lex Beyer there, and I asked him why, they had already raised $40 million. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but they had raised $40 million as part of a seed round. So I was joking and asking why this was now a Series A $40 million and not just added to like a Seed 2. You might as well just keep rolling on, literally with their robots. But yeah, they had a bunch of news that came out today, which is one, they raised a $40 million Series A. This brings their total funding to $85 million. We're going to put a pin in that because that's actually pretty important. And then two, they announced two new colleges they're going after, which one is the University of Pittsburgh and one is Purdue University. And this is their third and fourth publicly announced collegiate partners. They rolled out to George Mason University earlier this year and Northern Arizona University, both of whom have increased the number of robots in their delivery fleet and the hours of operation. And I should probably take a step back. Starship creates these small, cooler-sized, six-wheeled robots that autonomously drive around campus. And in this case, they will go and pick up food from restaurants, on-campus restaurants or where, stores or whatever, and deliver it to students, faculty, workers, wherever they want on campus. So they can drop a pin and the robot shows up with the thing and there you are. So you can be at the library. Do kids hang out in the quad anymore? Does that date me?
I think it does. Know. It seems like so many of these robot companies are focusing on college campuses. In fact, Kiwi, actually, I think they call their company Kiwi Campus, or at least it's certainly a core part of their identity. And then also, Chowbotics is rolling Sally out to college campuses. Why is college getting so much robot action?
Well, I think if you just think about what a college is, right? It is a specific area that is filled with tens of thousands of people, especially for larger schools, right? All of whom eat, and many of whom, like students, are eating throughout the day and evening. In fact, when I spoke with Starship, they were saying there are 4 distinct meals sort of in their pattern. One thing that they've actually caused is more kids to eat breakfast. More students are eating breakfast because they can get it delivered to their dorm, so they don't have to presumably. Although when I was in college, I remember just getting up at noon. But they have like a breakfast meal, a lunch, a dinner, and then a second dinner, which happens later in the evening. And anybody who's gone to college and had that experience probably remembers sort of the same sort of pattern.
Fourth meal?
Pardon?
I mean, did yes. Taco Bell had a whole advertising campaign around fourth meal?
They're like hobbits.
Yes, it's like the opposite of hobbits.
Reverse hobbit.
I don't know what that would be, if that's a wood elf or if that, I don't know anyway. But yeah, so yes, Chowbotics moved Sally, their salad making robot, onto college campuses, and Starship and Kiwi are going to college campuses because they have just this, and for a couple of reasons. One is that they have this contained population, right? They can plug into meal plans. So there's payment mechanisms that are built in. Plus, if you just think about a college campus, it's typically very pedestrian friendly. So it's a lot of, well-paved, well-groomed walkways. It's a good chance, it's not a lot of traffic. They have pedestrian traffic, but right, it's not like trying to navigate a city street.
It's like it's a starter city. It's like learning to robot city.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So like actually Starship's robots are on campuses of Pittsburgh and Purdue right now. And what they're doing right now is mapping the campus so that they are ready for when students show up next month.
Catherine, you were probably the last one, I'm guessing, that actually went to college. In fact, I know that. Unless, Jen, you slid in some courses I didn't know about. Would you have wanted to not get out of bed and lazily order food from a delivery robot?
I mean, absolutely. How could you not? My college was pretty small, so the level of laziness would be even more extreme. We also only had 3 restaurants in the entire town, so pretty limited. But I can imagine if I were going to a bigger school where it actually takes, 15, 20 minutes to walk across campus, that would absolutely be the case.
I feel like at some of these colleges, they actually may just want to invent their own robots, like some of the technology forward schools.
MIT. Why don't they probably have their own robots going?
Yeah, I think that there's also just a lot that goes into it. It's not just the driving, right? It's also the mapping and the payments and all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's also, if you think about just safety for some schools that are bigger, the ability to have a robot come to your dorm instead of walking across a dark campus. Also, just something like, if you think about if you get pizza or some kind of other food delivery, like Kiwi will go off campus and it'll go out into Berkeley and get your meal and bring it back to you on campus. If you had a delivery person do that, if they're in a car, then they have to find a parking spot that's close by, and that's hard on college campuses, and then they got to run to your dorm or wherever, right? Like, this just makes it the little robot can just beep boop bop and wheel across campus.
You don't have to tip a robot.
I think a lot of times on campuses too, like it's hard for delivery people the buildings are not always marked super clearly. Like this.
Oh yeah.
So, if there's a pinpoint instead that you're just meeting a bot at, that would make it that would cut down on the chances that some delivery guy's wandering around with a pizza looking for your dorm and not able to find you.
Or when you're playing hacky sack in the quad. That's what kids do, right?
That's your generation.
Loves the quad. Chris, get over the quad.
I think what you'll see is Starship said they plan to go out to 100 more universities over the next 2 years. Kiwi was going out to it said it was going to be in 15 universities this year, right? So you're going to see colleges be a battleground, which is why Starship raising $40 million is kind of important. That gives them a sizable amount of cash to go out and really lock in these college campuses before others can get to them.
Yeah, and speaking of battleground, isn't there like a little bit of confusion over, was it Purdue with both, that has sort of both Starship and Kiwi, or we're not really sure?
Yeah, I'm really trying to find this out, and I haven't heard back yet. So when I reported on Kiwi's expansion earlier this year, one of the schools they had said they were expanding to was Purdue. And then lo and behold, Starship said, we're going to Purdue, and we've already sent our robots there to start mapping, and we're working with the university. So trying to find out what's going on there, if they're doubling up or what's happening. But, you're going to see these things there. I think you're definitely going to see more delivery bots on campuses, and they're definitely going to be sort of a place where people are fighting as they go to market.
Before we move on, Chris, any other outdated college pop culture references you want to make? Dungeons and Dragons, maybe? Or
I was trying to think of a band. Like, is everybody still listening to Toad the Wet Sprocket?
I met Toad the Wet Sprocket at a party I threw in college. That's how on
name
the
dropper.
Were they the most boring party guests of all time?
It was the dude with the glasses. He hated being at my party. He really hated it, partly because I think his girlfriend liked me, but this was a long time ago.
Oh, my God.
Before I had more gray hair. In fact, I had no gray hair.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about this company called Melthi. Like, first of all, the problem with this company is it has the type of name you can't pronounce. Like, is it Melthi, Chris? Melthi?
I don't know. Catherine was the one who wrote about it.
I did write about it, but even I don't know. So, I mean, in my head, I was saying mealthy just because it's about cooking meals. So that would make some sort of sense. But as we know, sometimes the name does not really sound like you intended to sound with these, especially these startups.
No matter the name, though, they raised over $1 million on equity crowdfunding, which is kind of crazy for a piece of cooking hardware.
Yeah, so that was the cap that they're allowed to, and I'm not super familiar with all of the rules, but from what I read, that's the maximum amount that a startup is allowed to raise on a crowdfunding platform. So they raised a little over $1 million, and
actually, sorry, just to clarify, I think it's for equity.
Oh, okay.
Equity crowdfunding. Yep,
right, equity because you can raise a lot more than that on just like Kickstarter, but you don't get any equity. So the difference here is that they get backers get equity in the company.
Awesome.
Which to me makes it even more puzzling. Like an equity crowdfunding campaign for a housewares type of product is interesting. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, Chris. So people actually own a part of the business now.
Yeah, that's intriguing. I mean, writing about it yesterday, I was a little bit confused about the appeal at first. I mean, essentially, we write so much about like smart kitchen appliances here and all these kitchen appliances that have this added connectivity and smart capabilities. Mealthy is just making kitchen cooking devices. So they have something that's a multi-cooker, sort of a competitor to the Instant Pot. They also have some sort of thing like a lid that you can put on top of other cookers that's supposed to turn it into a air fryer. So it's sort of.
I thought that was the cool part.
Yeah,
right?
that's the cool product.
A lid that converts an Instant Pot into an air fryer is kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. So that they just launched. And then they're kind of going in one way with like sort of getting more into high tech kitchen appliances. But then the ones that they are now developing are like a line of pans, of nonstick pans and stuff like that, where I'm like, that's kind of cool, but do we really need more of those? There's nothing really to set them apart as far as I can tell. But clearly there's a lot of interest around it because they raised so much money. They were aiming for 25,000 initially and have raised over $1 million. So pretty impressive. I think my takeaway from doing a little bit of research into this is just that it shows how much consumers really want these convenient, just put all the ingredients in there, press a button, and come back to dinner in 30 minutes. Like they want these hands-off cooking solutions. Meal kits are easy, but you still have to actually do the preparation. Something with an Instant Pot is just like so hands-off, and there's just a lot of demand for that. Mealthy basically promises that it will give you an Instant Pot experience, but just be a little bit quicker, a little bit higher quality, and that's sort of what they're trying to edge in on that Instant Pot popularity.
Wasn't part of it the allure though that they also did like recipes? It was like a full stack solution. They didn't just do the pans. There was some like recipes attached to it as well.
There is. An Instant Pot actually does that as well, which I was researching, but it's not connected to their particular appliance in any way. Like you can't just they have an app where you can find Mealthy created recipes and then cook them with their appliances. But it's not something where like you can connect to the appliance with your phone. You'll pick a recipe, you have the Mealthy device, and you can read through the recipe step by step and then cook. So there is a sort of recipe connected component, and you can also shop the recipes through their app. So that's cool. It's kind of like two separate pieces, but there's not a connected aspect to it.
Well, interesting. Let's keep an eye on it. I'm a little bit perplexed because Instant Pot is kind of a runaway train, very affordable, and actually they have an air fryer, but here's a startup that's doing equity crowdfunding. So maybe people just wanted to in on the action, maybe wanted to own a little bit of an ownership stake, but and to your point, Chris, they also have this recipe part. So it's just a little bit of a convoluted offering from Mealthy, trying to figure out exactly what they are, but it'll be at least worth watching kind of where they go with this and just tracking it further. I want to talk a little bit about plant-based, and this is an interesting story that came out. I think it was another story that you had written, Catherine. Plant-based milk is so hot that the cow guys cow farmers want to get on it. They actually released a blended cow milk and plant-based milk, right?
Yeah. So yesterday I keep switching up the name and calling it Real Live Farms, but it's actually Live Real Farms, which is a brand made by the Dairy Farmers of America Collective. And they have this new blended product called Dairy Plus Blends. And it is a suite of products that are 50% milk, 50% either almond or oat milk. And so speaking with them yesterday, they are saying that they're trying, in speaking with consumers, they said that they like the taste of plant-based milk, but they wanted something that also had the creaminess and the versatility and the nutritional profile of animal milk, because there's a lot more protein in animal milk than in almond or oat milk. And so they're coming out with this product to sort of target consumers who have both products in their fridge. And like, I'm one of those people. Apparently, according to their research, about 50% of people buy both plant-based and dairy milk, either because there are different people in their household that have different preferences, or they use each one for different things. So they're basically trying to come out with a product that ticks all the boxes and appeals and can just be an all-in-one solution for, your cereal, your coffee, your smoothies, etc.
The problem I have with it is it's like, seems like you're either going to be in one camp or the other, right? You want to get milk out of your diet. You may have like a lactose thing. You just want to wean yourself off of any sort of animal-based product. You're not going to go for this. Or
I'm curious, yeah.
Right? Or alternatively, just like, if you're okay with cow-based milk, or maybe it's a starter milk for people who are plant-based milk curious. That would kind of be
milk
one
curious.
Thing. Exactly.
And I will say just quickly that all of them are lactose-free as well. So there's that added aspect.
Well, it made me wonder about just the whole blended, alternative proteins, whether it's, Catherine, you've written a lot about this sort of blended approach in the meat industry as well. And yeah, it does kind of make me wonder sort of what exactly is the aim here with these products, because on the one hand, you've got alternative milk, fully alternative milk or meat products talking about, the environmental benefits, which doesn't seem to be a factor if you're still using parts of the cow or, just regular old meat or milk. So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this does, because I don't think it makes quite as much sense as the blended meat products, which like Tyson has debuted a line from their Raised and Rooted product that it's 50% beef, 50% plant-based protein. And something like that makes a lot of sense because there are people who just don't either are really put off by the idea of like a Beyond or Impossible Burger, or just don't want to give up their meat for whatever reason. And something like this, it apparently tastes exactly the same and it has the same cooking properties, but it's you're cutting down 50% on the environmental and ethical, cost of meat. Whereas something with this milk, I kind of agree most people either go full on plant-based or full on regular. But then again, it's the same sort of value add where, yes, there's still dairy milk, but it's 50% less. So you're consuming less. And maybe this will be sort of a stepping stone on the way to people just going fully to plant-based milk. They're either hesitant right now because they want more nutrition that you get from milk, or they want the taste that you get from milk because, almond and oat, while good, can't do everything that milk does, doesn't have the same properties. So maybe this is just kind of a halfway as people edge towards more alternative milk, or as Mike was saying, for like the plant-based milk curious.
Well, it still makes you wonder why then are cow farmers putting it out? Like, I could see if it was like a plant-based company saying, hey, here's your starter milk, right? Like, hey, put your toe in the water, see if it's warm, then jump on in the pool. But like,
well,
it
makes sense, I think, because it's the same reason Tyson's doing it. They're saying, right. There's this trend, especially so with dairy, because, Jen was writing about how the Dairy Farmers of America had launched this accelerator program. Dairy sales are down in the U.S., and they're kind of scrambling to find some way to get people to buy more dairy. So they're like, okay, all these people are having alternative milk. Maybe if we just make a blended product, then at least they're still using 50% of our product, and we can appeal to the people who, for environmental or health reasons, use almond or oat milk, but maybe like don't love it. So they're just trying to sort of, if you can't beat them, join them situation.
Yeah. When I spoke with Dairy Farmers of America a couple of months ago, like plant-based milk came up in the conversation, and I don't believe they have any specific companies around that in the accelerator program, but they did say like, look, we recognize the demand is there and we need to listen to that demand to keep appealing to consumers. So, they hinted that they were making moves, but yeah, I think it's a lot like Tyson, just like you said, Catherine, is, these kind of legacy organizations are trying to figure out a way to stay relevant, basically.
It's almost as if, I think you guys bring up Tyson. That's really smart. They could take one stance, right? Be like the oil industry and say, hey, we're going to really resist, anything that's really like a true alternative. We're going to kind of say, hey, there's no problem with global warming. Or if they're like Tyson, say, hey, this is happening. We're a protein company. Much like, they should just say, the dairy farmers are maybe just saying, hey, we're a milk company, no matter what is plant-based or dairy, and just explore different alternatives. So good on them if that's really what they're doing.
Yeah, we'll see. They are just it's in a test market right now in Minnesota, and then they're going to be bringing it out in 2020, 2021. So I'm really eager to see how this does. And, I'm also a little bit skeptical about whether consumers will embrace it or to say, I don't really need this. I have my almond milk. I have my regular milk. I'll be really curious to see.
It's just the idea of all these labeling laws and consumer confusion. Mm-hmm. So if you have like to me, it would be like, oh, here's plant milk, here's cow milk, here's a blend of like that seems like it's going to cause more confusion than anything. Like, it's
yeah,
what?
I actually spoke to someone from the Live Real Farms, and she said that they're calling it milk blends, and obviously they're not too worried about the labeling pushback because they are the people who are doing the labeling pushbacks or those sort of groups. But calling it milk blends, they're like, well, it is a blend of milk and other things, so it's totally fine.
Last week, Jen, you wrote an article about the proposed cap on delivery fees for third-party delivery companies in New York City, which I think is interesting, especially as you look at all these companies that are looking to go IPO, whether it's DoorDash or whatever. This could eat into their bottom line. Tell us a little bit about that law, because I think it could have implications across the country.
Yeah, well, and this was kind of hinted at back in June when they did the big oversight hearing in New York about the commissions that restaurants pay to, Grubhub was kind of the front and center in that particular one, but it's the New York State Liquor Authority wants to put a 10% cap on the fees that restaurants pay to third-party delivery companies like DoorDash and like Grubhub. So the law basically says, these third-party delivery companies are sharing in the profits of these restaurants. And so they're basically subject to vetting by the authority. So what that means is that if they put a cap on delivery fees, it's restaurants actually, it would be illegal for a restaurant to pay Grubhub more than 10% on any transaction.
First of all, do you know what typically like a Grubhub or DoorDash gets in terms of a transaction?
Yeah, it's anywhere between about 12 and 30%.
So that's a huge cut for these companies potentially.
Well, yeah, and I think that's it's the question that's come up again and again is you've got one camp saying, well, these restaurants don't have to sign up with Grubhub. Nobody's sort of forcing them. But the reality is, as we say many, many times over here, delivery is basically table stakes now. Like, you have to do it. So what other option do these companies have? They can't, your local mom and pop burger joint doesn't have the money to hire their own fleet and back end logistics and all those other elements that these third party companies take care of. But, the big question now is, are they taking advantage of these smaller restaurants by throwing these astronomical fees at them? And I think at this point, I don't know so this particular proposal still has to be discussed. So it's not made into law yet, but I think the bigger picture point here is that this conversation is not going to go away about commission fees to third-party delivery services. And I think actually were this cap to actually be put on restaurants, it would probably have a ripple effect around the rest of the country. I think we'd see San Francisco do something similar. I think I mentioned in the Post, when New York proposed a ban on cashless restaurants with the cashless business model, it was a matter of months, I think, before multiple other cities proposed similar bans. And I could see something like that happening in this scenario too.
The delivery revolution, this third-party delivery revolution for restaurants, happened so quickly, right, that I don't think the regulation and regulatory environment has had a chance to catch up. And it so drastically changed the restaurant business. And so I think now we're just starting to see it catch up. And I kind of Freudian slipped robots because I was thinking what this might ultimately do if there's these caps is drive the acceleration towards automation of these delivery systems, right? If you have to pay only 10%, if you're only getting 10% if you're DoorDash or whatever, you're ultimately going to want to reduce the cost of delivery as much as you can to make it profitable for your business. So that makes me think, maybe it's going to be roboticized down the line.
That would make a lot of sense, especially since, as you mentioned, we've got Postmates and DoorDash both potentially IPOing soon. But, these companies are not profitable right now. And that will obviously start to become a really big problem in the public market. So, right now they can, I guess if were a cap like this one to be imposed, it could potentially really eat away at any potential profitability for these companies.
I mean, it's why Uber is basically exploring robotic delivery or robotic drivers, right? Because they realize their biggest cost is labor. So if you cut what the revenue is, you have to cut the cost of delivering this service. So it's an interesting thing to think about. But before we go any further, I think we've waited long enough to talk about our Impossible Whopper reviews. Chris, you wrote an Impossible Whopper review that was a whopper of a post. It's been our most popular post the last couple of days. What did you think of the Impossible Whopper?
Yeah, it's funny. As I've had time to sort of unpack the entire experience, Mike, it's fine, bordering on not great. For me, just as I think more about it, and I think this gets back to another issue. But I went to my local Burger King here in rural Washington. They had it. It was no big deal. Lots of other people in the restaurant ordered one as well. I talked to one guy there who said he ordered it for the environmental reasons, which is why I would order it as well too. Just the ethical, and it's not a health thing. I'm obviously in a Burger King. No, but mine was just felt kind of dry, and I got it with cheese, and it just felt like it wasn't a great experience. And I've had good Impossible burgers elsewhere, but this was just sort of meh, it's fine, I guess.
Do you think it was the cooking that made it dry? However they charbroil it or whatever Burger King does?
Yeah, I don't know what they do. I hear all the time different stories about how things are actually prepared in a fast food restaurant. But it's certainly, when you have something that high volume, I don't think a lot of, my guess is that, the care going into it is sort of sacrificed, unless they have some sort of automated cook program that walks through it. But I don't know, Mike, you had it as well, right? And I think yours was a bit better. Your experience was a bit better than mine.
Yeah, the best thing I could say about it is it tastes exactly like a Whopper to me, which is not saying it's maybe the best eating experience because it's a Whopper, but it tasted exactly like a Whopper. So I think mission accomplished for them. Whatever Impossible is doing now, it seems to me for me at least, when I experience it, whether it's at Red Robin or at Burger King, they've got to the point where the restaurants are cooking it consistently, and it tastes good, and it tastes like that burger should taste. Because I will say, the burger at Red Robin, the Impossible Burger, is a different experience than the Impossible Burger at Burger King. What they're doing is creating patties or burger experiences, it seems to me, that fit within what the customer expects at that given restaurant, right? Because as you guys know, a Burger King hamburger is much different than a Red Robin hamburger, and Impossible is creating tailored experiences for each of those.
Let's see. I've had the Impossible slider at White Castle, which I think you did too, Catherine, on your family holiday White Castle field trip or whatever it is you guys did.
I loved it.
I liked it. So I had this thought of, I felt like I could tell it tasted like Impossible Burger, it wasn't fooling me who eats meat, but I kind of wonder how much of that was in my head because I already knew it was impossible. I would love to see something like what they've done at McDonald's in Sweden brought over to the US, where you can basically pay for a blind taste test.
Oh yeah, that's Burger King. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't Impossible, but it was Burger King. Yeah. But I would just be so curious to see that happening more, just to see what people's sort of unbiased thoughts are when they don't know what they're getting.
Yeah, I like that idea. Almost like kind of the Pepsi Coke challenge, although I guess they knew that was coming. But yeah, to kind of do that is interesting. What I found interesting about the Possible Whopper is it actually had that flame broiled Whopper taste to it, which makes me think it's like a chemical they add. Because there's that signature taste that I think each fast food restaurant has. And there's a signature Burger King taste, and it's that flame broiled flavor. And it was definitely on the Impossible Whopper. I don't know how they did it, if there's some additive, or it's actually the fact that they put it over a flame and it transferred that flavor property. But it was definitely there.
Yeah, for sure. It's on brand with the rest of the menu items at Burger King. And, from my anecdotal evidence, a lot of people are ordering it, at least to try it out. So what I'm going to be curious about is what are the stats going forward? Like, people got the first one. Now are they going to go back and get another one?
Yeah. If you are not a Burger King customer normally and you now have an option there, do you start going more? And then B, if you've gone there for a while, do you switch over from that regular Whopper to the plant-based one? Like, I'm curious to see what that looks like. It does seem, Chris, that a lot of the early kind of buzz out of it is like Burger King's seeing a lot of traffic, and like you noticed it, like you said, in the restaurant.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, their own stats say that when they ran the test in St. Louis initially, they got an 18% bump in foot traffic for stores that had the Impossible versus stores that didn't. So now as they roll that out nationwide, it'll be interesting to see if that carries out. Like, they're definitely drawing in lapsed Burger King customers, right? The question is, will those lapsed Burger King customers, what's going to be the churn on that, right? They got everybody in the door once. Now, how many times are they going to come back?
Yeah, and I think it'll be really interesting to see as more and more fast food restaurants roll out either Impossible Burger or Beyond or develop their own plant-based alternative in-house. Maybe vegetarians or flexitarians or plant-based meat curious people are going to Burger King now to try the Whopper. But, if McDonald's rolls something out and soon you go to pull off the highway and every single fast food option has a Beyond or an Impossible or whatever, how are you going to choose one over the other at that point?
I think it goes back down to that signature taste Mike was talking about. I mean, because now if you're on a road trip and you decide to pull over at an exit and go, okay, I'll get some fast food, what do you choose it on? It's usually, well, I prefer Wendy burgers over McDonald's, or, I hate Burger King's fries, or, all of those factors come down to taste. So if you can't taste the difference between, if you're not supposed to be able to taste the difference between the plant-based version and the meat version, it would come back to the actual restaurant's kind of signature taste, I would think.
So it would end up being to sort of a wash once everybody has it. You're going to go to Burger King or Wendy's based on whether you liked Burger King or Wendy's before they had plant-based meat, because now they both have Impossible or whatever, but they've adapted it and made it taste exactly like their signature burgers.
I mean, that would make sense to me. Yeah.
Well, because will people choose either Impossible or Beyond then, right?
Yeah.
As Beyond sets up in different restaurants.
That's absolutely fair. And then as also we go down the road, both Impossible and Beyond are gunning for making an alternative that tastes exactly like the real thing, like meat. And right now, they're both doing relatively well, I think. We're kind of divided on which ones we like better here. But as they keep rolling out more and more versions and getting closer and closer in taste and texture and all of that, maybe eventually it just truly will taste the same.
But what if your average consumer doesn't actually care if it's Impossible or Beyond? I mean, I don't know. Like, we obviously all have our opinions on them, but we kind of, this is what we do every single day, is talk about this sort of thing. I'm just wondering if your average consumer stopping at a fast food hub is going to care whether it's Impossible or Beyond.
Don't know.
I think they will, right? Like, we all have opinions on Coke versus Pepsi. I think consumers have opinions. It's kind of early in that cycle for people to discern those, but I think ultimately they will.
I agree. Like, right now, people are like, oh, yeah, it's the ones that bleed like me, but it isn't. If I just am chatting with a friend who kind of knows about it but isn't totally sure, they'll use them interchangeably and get confused, which, if you're not doing it every day like we are, is totally understandable. But I agree with Mike that eventually it'll become so commonplace and recognizable, especially once Impossible goes into retail and people can, buy it and really see the difference in their grocery store, that it will be sort of a Coke Pepsi. I mean, I'm Coke all the way. If you offer me Pepsi, I'm like, oh, never mind. So could be like that. I am from Hotlanta.
Well, burgers, plant-based burgers, that's yesterday's news. Tomorrow, I think we're going to try some plant-based ice cream, right? Catherine, you're going to show up with that Oatly ice cream?
Yes, I got a shipment of some Oatly ice cream, which, full disclosure, I did sample a tiny bit, guys, but don't worry, I'm saving plenty for you. And pretty good so far. I mean, I sampled.
So wait.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll talk about it next week.
Well, teaser.
Don't. Teaser. Speaking of teasers, Smart Kitchen Summit is in about just a little under 7 weeks. I just got confirmation yesterday that the guy who's basically heading up IBM's Artificial Intelligence will be here talking about their partnership with McCormick, kind of using AI to create the future flavor. We have the CTO from Zoom coming to talk about food robotics. We have so many cool speakers coming. Like it's kind of like just blowing my mind at this point, guys. I'm getting excited.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be here sooner than we know it.
So get your tickets, smartkitchensummit.com. Use the podcast discount code podcast, 25% off tickets. But hey guys, thanks for getting together. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll try to do next week because we have some Oatly ice cream to eat that we need to talk about. All right, guys. Again, for Chris Albrecht, Catherine Lamb, and Jen Marston, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.